What is up my friends, my name is Evan, welcome back to the Evan Jung Show. In today's video, I want to talk about, did Jesus really rise from the dead? The whole Christianity hinges on the resurrection of Jesus, right? If Jesus rose from the dead, then Christianity is true. If not, Christianity would have been a lie. The points that I will be making in this video are mainly based on Norman Geisler and Frank Turek's book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. Read it with an open heart and I promise you, it's gonna be an eye-opening experience. But if you don't have time to read it, you can always watch my videos where I break it down into smaller chunks, summarize the main ideas, and give my own thoughts. Without further ado, let's begin. Whether you believe Jesus really rose from the dead or not, there are some indisputable historical facts about Jesus agreed upon by virtually all scholars. Let's take a look at some of them. 1. Jesus was a Nazarene Jew who lived under the Roman Empire in the 1st century AD. 2. Jesus died by Roman crucifixion under the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. 3. Jesus' tomb was found to be empty after he was buried there. 4. Jesus' disciples and followers claim that they have seen the risen Jesus on the 3rd day that he has died. 5. The disciples' lives were thoroughly transformed and they were even willing to die for their belief. 6. Jesus' death and resurrection is the center message preached by all his disciples. 7. James, the brother of Jesus, was a skeptic before this, was converted when he believed that he saw the risen Jesus as well. 8. Saul of Tarsus, who was a Pharisee, a staunch persecutor of Christians, became a Christian believer due to an experience he also believed to be the appearance of the risen Jesus. And number 9. Christianity rapidly grew and expanded despite heavy persecution by both the Jews and the Romans. Now, what is the simplest and most logical explanation for all these historical facts? Jesus actually rose from the dead. But of course, skeptics can always come out with an alternate explanation. Let's take a look at some of them. Number 1. The hallucination theory. Perhaps the disciples really believed in the resurrection, but actually they were hallucinating. But if you really think about it, hallucinations can only be experienced by individuals and not groups. Hallucinations are a lot like dreams. They are not collective experiences. Just like individuals have dreams, but groups do not. If an individual has a hallucination, the rest of his friends will not. And even if they do, they will not have the exact same hallucination. Jesus did not just appear once to one person. Jesus appeared to many people on many occasions over a 40-day period. Jesus was seen in many places, walking, eating with people, with men and women. A total of around 500 people has seen the risen Jesus. They ate with Jesus and they even touched him physically. If Jesus was really dead and the followers were just merely hallucinating, then why didn't the Roman officials just simply parade Jesus' body around the city? That would have certainly ended Christianity once and for all, but they weren't able to do it because the tomb was indeed empty. On to theory number 2, and that is the apparent death theory. Maybe he was still alive when he was placed in the tomb, but somehow he escaped and convinced his disciples that he has risen from the dead. But then again, how can a seriously injured and bleeding man be still alive after 2 days in the tomb? If he hasn't died on the cross, he would have bled to death in that cold and dark tomb. How could he have unwrapped himself and removed the 2-ton rock that sealed the tomb all by himself, sneak past the elite Roman guards who were there specifically to guard the tomb to get back to his disciples? Even if somehow he managed to do that, then his disciples would have pitied him and brought him straight to a doctor when they see him in such a bad and unrecognizable shape instead of worshipping him. On to theory number 3, and that is, maybe the disciples stole the body and they invented the resurrection. If this is true, then the New Testament writers will be deceivers. They'll be liars. But if you think about it, what did the disciples benefit from stealing Jesus' body. They stole the body so that they can get beaten, tortured, and martyred. Why would anyone want to do it? Why would the disciples embark on such a self-defeating conspiracy? Why would anyone want to continue saying that Jesus has resurrected from the dead when they could have saved themselves from torture and death simply by recanting? Moving on to theory number 4, and that is, maybe a substitute took Jesus' place on the cross. Jesus was not crucified, but instead someone else took his place on the cross. But this theory just simply contradicts all the eyewitness testimonies and the testimonies of the non-Christian sources as well. Did the disciples, the Roman guards, Pontius Pilate, the Jews, Jesus' friends and family were all mistaken by who was killed? How could so many people be wrong about a simple identification? If Jesus wasn't killed, then why was the tomb of the man who was actually killed found empty? Are we to believe that the man who was actually killed rose from the dead instead? And are we to believe that all the Christian and non-Christian sources about the death of Jesus were all wrong? Are we to believe that everyone in the first century got Jesus wrong? This theory was built on a mere speculation without any of its own evidence to support it. On to the 5th theory, and that is, maybe the disciples' faith led to their belief in Jesus' resurrection. But if you read the historical accounts, Jesus' disciples, they were super scared and they were scattered after Jesus' crucifixion. So they were definitely not in their right mind to invent the resurrection story and to go out and die for it. They actually went into hiding in fear of the Jews and the Romans. Peter, who's Jesus' most trusted disciple, denied Jesus 3 times even before Jesus' trial and crucifixion. It was the resurrection appearances that gave the disciples bold faith, not the other way around. The faith of the disciples did not lead to the resurrection, but the resurrection led to the faith of the disciples. This theory also doesn't explain the empty tomb and the Jewish accounts to explain the empty tomb. Why did the Jewish authorities continue to insist that the disciples had stolen the body if the resurrection was merely the disciples' blind faith? So you see, in light of all the positive first century evidence for the resurrection, skeptics must also provide positive first century evidence for their alternate theories. It is one thing to come up with the alternate theory for the resurrection, but it's another thing to find first century evidence for it. A theory is not evidence. Skeptics try to come up with alternate theories because they rule out the possibility of miracles and supernatural events in the first place. And like I mentioned in my previous video, if God exists, then miracles are absolutely possible. I've done quite a few videos about the evidence on God's existence. I'll link them down in the description below if you want to check them out. And if you found this video helpful in any way, please drop me one of these. It really encourages me. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you agree or disagree with me, I would love to have a conversation in the comments. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button below and turn on the notification bell so that you won't miss out any of my future videos on faith. Have a good Sunday, y'all, and I'll see every one of you in my next video. Bam!